Welcome to Facts at 5. Today we have a very special guest. Our new Village East Hampton Mayor, Jerry Larsen, is with us, and we're pleased to have him here. Mayor Larsen, welcome to LTV.
Hey, good afternoon. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, this has been quite a year for a lot of people between a pandemic and all kinds of things going on in the world. It's got to be a challenging time to be an elected official. I know you ran on the Newtown Party. I want you to just talk about what that means, if some people don't know what that is. And also, we're going to talk about your new proposals and what you have in store for the village. Tell us about the Newtown Party and this and your initiative.
So what's really interesting in the villages, so Sag Harbor Village, Southampton Village, East Hampton Village, and most of the villages throughout Suffolk County, there are no Republicans or Democratic parties. So when you go to the voting booth, there are no Democrats, no Republican Party. So all the villages just come up with a creative name. Like when we were running this time, we came up with the Newtown Party because we have Newtown Lane.
Right.
I live on Newtown Lane. Chris Minardi who is running with me, lives right off of Newtown Lane. So, it's a play on words, Newtown. So that was our little party name. And the other parties were the Elms Party, and the other one was the Fishhooks. So they all have meaning within the village of East Hampton. So that's really how that works. So it's kind of interesting because it's actually a better way to have an election, I believe, because you really have to know the issues and you have to know the candidates. You can't just go in and pick all the R's or all the D's. You really have to know who you're voting for. So in that way, I think it's much, much better.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's an interesting perspective too. I understand that because people do sometimes just go through and click.
So I do the same thing. Like if I don't know someone, then I'll pick the party.
Yeah.
Because my beliefs may be more in line with that party than the other party. So.
Right. Well, now you launched quite a campaign. I mean, you outspent your opponents. I know that, and you raised a lot of funds for this. Why? Tell us. You ran on a platform of 30 years of the village being no. Explain what you mean by that, okay? And why you really wanted this job.
So, again, I started with the village in 1983 as a traffic control officer, and I worked, and then I became a police officer, and then eventually chief of police, and I spent 34 years doing that within the village. Prior to that, I was I grew up on Buell Lane. So I have a long history with the village. And when I first became involved with the village government, it was really a very friendly place. And it seemed like a family to me, for a lack of a better explanation. But over the years, it became very unfriendly, in my opinion. I mean, you had village government fighting with the expansion of a library, which, they wanted to add a children's wing. And I found that, ridiculous that we were not letting our library add on a children's wing. So that was like in 2000. So it just became very unfriendly. It seemed like everything that wanted to be done in this village, the first response was no. In fact, we had an old-timer code enforcement officer, and in the village code book, he had put in a page that said no on it, on the first page. So if you would come in and ask something, he would just grab the book and open it, and it would just say no, as a joke. But so my plan was to change that whole atmosphere and make it a more friendly village, more welcoming. I mean, if you take Herrick Park, for example, women's softball used to play in Herrick Park. There used to be a lot of teams that would play Frisbee, all kinds of things that took place in the park in the 80s and early 90s. And then all of a sudden, the park seemed to close.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 2 years ago when I started at LTV, I remember we covered the Village Fall Festival. And that was, exciting. But then there were other times where I had people say, we're not allowed to build this tree house because there was this amazing temporary tree house there. And there were all kinds of people coming up to us and saying, different things about what should be done. So I want to talk about some of those, some of your proposals. I know parking has been something on your agenda, sewage system. I mean, a lot of people bemoan the fact that the village, seems like a ghost town compared to maybe say Sag Harbor, which seems a little more vibrant.
Exactly.
And I want to talk about that and what your plans are for that.
So the main problem with us becoming more like Sag Harbor, the main roadblock is the septic system. Sag Harbor back in the 70s put in a centralized sewer system, which then allows for more flow rate, and you comply with the county regulations as far as septic. In East Hampton Village, we don't have that. Everybody has their old-fashioned cesspools behind their stores and behind their buildings. So no one can open a restaurant right now because we don't comply with the county septic flow rates and septic system requirements. So this centralized sewer system, which runs probably a price tag of about $20 million, is something that's on our agenda to get completed. It's a very in-depth process, and we've looked at one that was just completed in Hampton Bays. We've looked at one that was just in the process in West Hampton Village, and it takes about 5 years to complete. So our goal, we already have the plans drawn up, and we want to start moving forward on this as soon as possible. Okay. And to pay for that, we want to start charging for some of our parking during the season, and then that money can be earmarked to pay for this sewer system. So we're not taxing the residents of the village for something that's only going to be used by a portion of the residents.
Right, and I understand that you may try to change the positioning of the parking, like on Newtown Lane, for instance, where, for people who aren't good at parallel parking, I happen to be very good at that, but you're going to do the nose in.
Most people are not.
Parallel parking, but it's,
Most people are not very good at parallel parking, as we all know, and that really causes even more congestion in the parking lot. And again, a lot of our residents that are out here during the summer, maybe they don't drive a lot. They may have a driver's license, but maybe the only time they do drive is in the summer. And parallel parking is almost impossible unless you are a well-accomplished driver. So you're just forcing more people into the parking lot, in my opinion.
Parking spaces, if you did the nose in, right? Wouldn't you get more space?
You do, and it also is better. I'm a big proponent of outdoor dining. So during the COVID, the last administration was basically forced to allow the outdoor dining, even though they opposed it. And what they did is they allowed it, but they took out parking spaces in front of the restaurants.
Right.
Because otherwise, if you're parallel parking, you're going to open your door right into people's tables. Yeah. You're going to walk into their restaurant area.
Right.
So, or their dining area, I should say. So by changing it to diagonal parking, like they do in Sag Harbor and they do in Southampton Village, it's more conducive to allow the outdoor dining.
Obviously, this is a challenging time. I don't envy anybody who is an elected official during this COVID, and we're all doing our best, obviously. But let's talk about going into the fall and the winter. What is it going to look like? I understand that Village Hall is closing. How do you see things in terms of some of the spikes that are happening in Suffolk County? Where are you now with that?
So I took over in September 17th. We took over. The numbers were very, very low in Suffolk County and in the state of New York. So we went back to real meetings for the village board. I gave the option to our appointed boards whether they wanted to go back to regular meetings or they wanted to stay virtual. They decided to stay virtual. So we were the only board that was doing the in-person meetings. And now with the numbers spiking, Village Hall is closed. And we did it out of precaution because the numbers are spiking or starting to go up in Suffolk County. And moving into the holidays, there's no reason, in my opinion, to keep our non-essential workers in the building all in close quarters when we can take shifts and we have 50, every other day we have a small staff that comes in to get their work done. And the off days, they're working from home. And I just think moving into I don't want to see anybody getting sick and for the holidays and we'll reevaluate after January and we'll see where the numbers are.
Do you see outdoor dining in the village continuing? I mean, I know on Newtown, many times said it,
absolutely. Yeah. As you know, when we won this election, we won with majority of the board, and the majority of us are a very big proponent of outdoor dining. So we are going to create legislation to make that happen all the time. So not just during COVID. And that's the reason for the diagonal parking as well.
Got it. Talk more about some of your other proposals, because I know you talked about police reform. All right. What else is on your, what is on your hot?
Yeah, we had kind of I have kind of a great, what I thought was a great idea. And, you know, with my law enforcement background, I just thought this was something that could really help law enforcement families, the public. If you realize when a police officer is hired, they're usually at a very young age, probably in their 20s. A lot of them still live at home when they're hired. And over the course of time, you only have to take one psychological exam to become a police officer. It's a thorough exam, but
Right.
once you're in, there's really nothing after that that's mandated or required. So my thought was that we have other trainings that we have to do yearly, say like CPR,
Right.
and officers just accept that because it's just a yearly thing that you have to do. So I thought making a psychological exam mandatory every 3 years, and it takes the stigma off of picking somebody out individually and saying you need to go for a psych exam. So everybody has to go, and it's all confidential. And if it helps one person, I think it's well worth it.
Well, it's challenging to be a police officer, I think. And
Well, you think,
yeah.
Andrew, you think about the things that even in a small village, what police officers, or even as a police officer, that we all go through. Your parents die, you get married, you get divorced, you have children. All of these things happen through you. And then you add into what a police officer sees: horrible car accidents, children dying, drowning in pools. I mean, it just, even in a small village, you see really bad things, suicide victims. So all of those things compile, and you never, ever talk to anybody. I just think it's a good way to get somebody in to see somebody. And like I said, if it helps one person, one family, then we've succeeded.
Great. Okay, in the minute that we have left, I want to ask you, for those who, obviously, East Hampton Village has a great history. What do you say to them? You know, because you're saying, you know, making changes, and that always changes is sometimes happens incrementally. What do you want people to know about preserving these histories and also going forward? And what do you want them really to know about you that they might not know?
Okay, so
That's a lot in a minute.
yeah, people who know me know that I love history. That's one of my favorite pastimes, to read about the history, especially of our village. And we are going to continue keeping our village historic, but we can also have 21st century amenities that can work to enhance the other parts of our village. But certainly we need to, I love our lantern tour that Hugh King does, and we go up and down the street with the lanterns. We should be doing that every weekend, in my opinion, and more people should share in the history. I also have a great idea that I think it's a great idea. I want to start, as soon as we get past this COVID, I want to start having our work sessions held in our historic locations so that Hugh King can give the history of the location, people can see it, and that includes our historic inns, which I'm a big proponent of, as you probably know.
Yeah.
So I would love people to see all of those things and encourage people to take advantage of our historic locations.
That's great. Well, Mayor Jerry Larsen, we are excited about a lot of these initiatives, and we hope that you come back to LTV on a regular basis. Maybe we'll do take some questions from people in the village in the future, or however we work this. But we are.
I would love to. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anytime, I'm happy to come back.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
Okay, bye-bye.